She sat on my lap like it was a game, but then she whispered something that shattered me. Not because it was wrong, because it was true. And in that one breath, I realized just how far I'd drifted from myself and from the man I promised to love forever. My name is Claire, I'm 36, and I'm not even sure who I am anymore when I look in the mirror. I used to be the kind of woman who laughed from her belly, who danced barefoot in the kitchen with wine-stained lips and a man's arms around her waist. I used to feel wanted, desired, alive. Now I mostly just feel watched, touched, but not seen, held, but not known. And yet, there was that one moment, that one evening. She sat on my lap and whispered things I can't forget. Words that still ring through the quiet like a bell I didn't know I needed to hear. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You should know I've been married for nearly 12 years. Mark was everything to me once. He was warmth and charm and chaos in all the best ways. I remember our first vacation to Spain. I wore that yellow sundress he loved, and he couldn't keep his hands off me. We made love on a hotel balcony while the city glowed beneath us. He kissed my shoulder and said I tasted like sunlight. And now? Now he kisses me like he's clocking in for work. I don't think he means to. I honestly don't. He's a good man, stable, loyal, the kind of man who fills up the gas tank before I notice it's empty. But over the years, our intimacy faded like old denim. Comfortable, but threadbare. Just last week, he came up behind me while I was chopping vegetables, wrapped his arms around me, and kissed my neck. I smiled, but it felt off, like his lips were searching for a version of me that no longer lived in that kitchen. I didn't pull away, but I didn't melt either. That scared me. We used to cuddle at night until our legs tangled and our bodies felt like puzzle pieces. Now, when he reaches for me, it feels like a question I don't know how to answer. I stiffen. He shifts away. We both pretend we're asleep. That's the worst part, the pretending. The way silence becomes its own language in a dying marriage. I tried to talk to him once. I asked if he ever felt lonely even though we were in the same room. He laughed it off and slapped my butt like we were in a sitcom. Not when I've got this view, he said. And I flinched. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't feel like love. It felt like habit. Like muscle memory. Like he needed me to be sexy because he didn't know how to talk to the woman I've become. I didn't say anything. Just forced a smile and kept folding laundry. I tell myself it's just a season. That all marriages go through this. That we're both tired, overworked, worn down. But deep inside, I feel this slow unraveling. Like a thread being pulled from the hem of my life, and I'm too paralyzed to stop it. And then that night happened. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even supposed to mean anything. She came over with a bottle of wine and that reckless kind of laugh that fills the whole house. Jenna, my friend from the art studio. She's younger than me. Wilder. Free in a way I've forgotten how to be. We were talking, sitting on the floor, music low. She said something funny and climbed into my lap, giggling. Just teasing, like girls do when they're a little tipsy and trying to feel young again. But then her voice changed. She leaned in, brushed a strand of hair behind my ear, and whispered something soft and slow and dangerous. I can't tell you what it was not yet. Not because it's explicit. It wasn't. But because it pierced something in me I didn't know still worked. That whisper lit a match in a room I thought was already burnt out. And that was the moment I knew something in me had shifted. Not because of her, not entirely, but because I realized how long it had been since someone saw me. Really saw me. Not as a wife. Not as a mother. Not as a warm body in a cold bed. But as a woman. Mark came home late that night. I was still on the couch, the TV flickering across the empty wine glasses. Jenna had already left, and I was sitting there like a ghost in my own life, trying to make sense of the way her breath had stirred something deep in my chest, not even sexual, exactly, just intimate. Soft. Intentional. He came through the door with that familiar, heavy sigh, his shoulders sagging beneath his work bag. Emergency consult, he mumbled, setting his keys in the tray like always. Mark's a trauma surgeon, brilliant in chaos, but emotionally absent at home. His days are soaked in blood and adrenaline, mine in routine and the quiet ache of feeling forgotten. He looked over at me, smiled faintly. Still up? I nodded. He leaned down to kiss me. I let him, but it felt like someone else's husband kissing someone else's wife. Everything okay? He asked, but it felt like checking a box, not asking a question. Yeah, I said. Fine. He sat beside me and instinctively rested his hand on my thigh. I froze. It wasn't that I didn't want him to touch me, I just wanted him to see me first. To talk. To notice how different I'd been lately. To ask me why my eyes looked heavier. Why I flinched when he reached for me. Instead, he moved his hand a little higher. Babe, I said, too quickly, I'm tired. He pulled away like he'd been slapped. I hated that. Hated how rejection, even soft-spoken, hardened him. He turned back toward the TV, silence swelling between us like a dam. I wanted to say something. Anything. I saw Jenna tonight, I offered, hoping it might spark something casual, normal. She came by after her class. He nodded, distant. The painter, right? Yeah. She stayed for a bit. We had wine. Talked. Good, he said, eyes still on the screen. Glad you had a fun girls' night. He didn't ask anything else. I wanted him to ask. About the way she looked at me. About the way I felt when she laughed into my neck. About the whisper I can still hear like it's etched into my skin. But he didn't. Instead, he reached for me again, his hand sliding beneath my shirt now, tentative but eager. I knew what he wanted. What he thought would reconnect us. And for a moment, I almost let him. But then I realized, he didn't see the parts of me that were unraveling. He only saw the body he thought he could hold back together. Mark, I whispered, trying not to sound cold. Can we just lie down? Like just sleep? He pulled away again, this time more definitively. I don't get you lately, Claire. Every time I try to be close, you shut down. I'm not shutting down, I said quickly. I need more than this. What does that mean? He asked, voice tight. I come home exhausted, I try to show you I love you, and somehow that's the wrong thing? It's not wrong, I said softly. It's just, I need words. I need to feel connected. Not just touched. He rubbed his face with his hand, the way he always does when he's frustrated, but trying not to yell. Claire, I don't know what you want from me. I didn't either. Not really. Maybe I wanted him to notice I'd been disappearing. Maybe I wanted him to ask me how I was really doing instead of brushing it off with a kiss and a grope. Maybe I just wanted him to remember I was more than skin. And deep down, I hated that part of me compared his silence to the softness of Jenna's voice. I hated that her whisper felt more intimate than anything Mark had said in weeks. I curled up in bed that night while he stayed on the couch, flipping through channels like he was searching for something to distract him from the woman he couldn't figure out anymore. And I lay there, eyes wide open, wondering if I even wanted to be figured out by him anymore. I started timing my showers around when Mark got home. Not because I needed the privacy, but because I didn't want him to follow me in anymore. Not with that boyish grin and hopeful hands. Not with that same old rhythm we'd long since outgrown. It sounds cruel, I know. But I was tired of pretending his touch lit me up when it didn't. I wanted to want it. I really did. But lately, every time he kissed me, I felt like I was kissing back through a layer of glass. And then came the night I faked sleep. He slipped into bed late, after his second shift that week. I was turned toward the wall, breathing slow, my eyes open in the dark. I felt the mattress shift, felt his arm reach across the space between us. His palm rested on my hip, familiar, gentle. Not demanding. Just there. But it still felt heavy. He kissed the back of my neck. The same spot he always used to. But the spark had been replaced by pressure. I lay still. He nuzzled in, fingertips tracing up under my shirt, breath warm against my shoulder. I didn't move. Maybe he got the message. Or maybe he thought I was too tired. Either way, he stopped. A minute passed. Then 2. Then he rolled over with a frustrated sigh that said more than words ever could. That was the moment something inside me twisted, because it wasn't that I didn't want to be close. I missed closeness. I missed tenderness that wasn't coded in foreplay. I missed laughing during dinner and brushing hands on accident and meaning it when I said I love you at night. But we'd lost the language. Somewhere between schedules and dishes and unspoken resentment, we forgot how to speak gently to each other. The next morning, he tried again. In his way. He grabbed me by the waist as I stood by the sink, kissed me on the cheek, then gave my butt a little slap, playful, affectionate. But I jumped like I'd been shocked. He pulled back immediately. Jesus. Sorry. I didn't mean to, no, it's okay, I said too fast. I just wasn't expecting it. The awkward silence that followed was louder than anything either of us could have said. He left for work without finishing his coffee. I stared at the empty mug long after the front door shut. The thing is, it's not about the touch. It's about the meaning behind it. He thinks if he holds me, everything will fix itself. That our marriage lives in muscle memory. But I don't want habit. I want presence. I want him to ask how I'm really doing and sit still long enough to hear the answer. Lately, I overthink every moment. Every kiss. Every invitation to be intimate. And it's exhausting, because I'm constantly trying to decode my own reactions. Why did I flinch? Why do I feel guilty? Why do I crave closeness but recoil when it comes? And, more than anything, why does everything have to turn into sex? Why can't he just hold me? Why can't he just listen? Why does affection feel like a countdown? Sometimes I wonder if he feels the difference too, the dead air between us, the shallow ways we pretend everything's fine. I know he's trying. But so am I. And it still doesn't feel like enough. It started over dinner. Which is ironic, considering I had spent the afternoon trying to make it special. Homemade lasagna, his favorite. Candles. Real plates instead of the chipped ones we always use. For a moment, I thought maybe it would help. Maybe if we sat down, just the two of us, no distractions, something might open back up between us. A small spark. A moment of clarity. Anything. Mark came home an hour late. He didn't apologize. Just kissed the top of my head distractedly and said, rough case. Then he tossed his bag down and went to change. By the time he sat across from me, the lasagna was cold. I tried to keep things light. Asked about work. Smiled when he talked, even though his voice felt a million miles away. He gave short answers, barely looking up from his plate. Halfway through the meal, he reached his foot under the table to touch mine. I paused. It wasn't a big gesture, just his way of reaching out, I think. But instead of feeling warmth, I felt pressure. And suddenly, I couldn't do it anymore. Do you even like being here? I blurted. He looked up, startled. What? I swallowed hard. My hands were trembling, though I tried to keep them still on the table. Here. With me. This marriage. Us. Claire, he said slowly, where is this coming from? I felt the tears before I even realized they were happening. Hot, angry, unstoppable. I made this dinner, I said, voice breaking. I tried. And you just come in and you don't even see me. He set his fork down, sighing like I was being dramatic. I told you it was a rough day. It's always a rough day, Mark. My voice cracked. Every day, there's a reason you're not here. Physically maybe, but not really here. And when you do show up, the only way you know how to connect is to touch me like it's a reflex. He blinked at me stunned. I don't know what you want from me. I'm trying. Are you? I stood now, pacing, hands flying. Because it doesn't feel like trying. It feels like surviving. It feels like we're roommates who occasionally have sex out of obligation. He recoiled like I slapped him. You think I don't notice? I continued. You think I can't feel how mechanical it's become? Like I'm just something you check off your list before bed. His jaw tightened. You're being unfair. No, I said, quieter now. I'm being honest. A silence fell between us. Thick. Heavy. Then he said it. So this is about Jenna, isn't it? I froze. I didn't even realize he'd picked up on anything. What? The way you talked about her last week. The way you looked after she left. I'm not stupid, Claire. I stared at him, mouth open, words stuck in my throat. Because what could I say? That she sat on my lap and whispered the most human thing I'd heard in years? That she didn't touch me, not really, and yet it was the most intimate moment I'd felt in months. You think I'm cheating? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. But the silence said everything. I walked out of the room. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I just walked into the bedroom and shut it gently, like closing a book I wasn't sure I wanted to finish. Later that night, lying alone in bed, I tried to untangle the guilt from the grief. I hated how quickly things fell apart. Hated that I'd let it build this long. But mostly, I hated the shame curling in my chest, not because I'd done something wrong, but because I'd let myself feel something from someone else. And even though nothing happened, even though there were no secrets, no affair, no kiss, the whisper still rang in my ears. Maybe you deserve to be adored. That's what she said. And maybe that's what broke me. The house felt like it had been emptied of color. Mark didn't sleep in the bed that night. I heard him moving in the living room, the creak of the couch, the soft thud of him sitting down hard. No words. No door slam. Just silence. And it stayed that way. For days. We moved around each other like strangers wearing familiar skin. He made coffee in the morning, but didn't ask if I wanted any. I folded laundry in the evening, but didn't pair his socks. Small, quiet punishments. Petty, aching distances. I missed him. God, I missed him. But I didn't know how to reach for him without collapsing under the weight of all the words we hadn't said. He wasn't cruel. He didn't raise his voice or storm out. He just went quiet, the kind of quiet that made me wonder if he was already halfway gone. That's the thing about Mark. His hurt is private. Careful. He's learned how to bleed internally. And me? I watched him as if trying to memorize him. The way he rubbed his temples when he read. The way he still turned the bathroom faucet too far to the left. I watched him because part of me wondered if we were already in the process of ending, and I needed to know what I was losing. Or maybe what I had already lost. One afternoon, I caught him staring at his wedding ring. Not dramatically, just absently, twisting it around his finger while reading emails on his phone. I stood in the hallway unseen, and something inside me crumbled. He wasn't the villain in this. He was trying. He always had been. Just in ways that didn't always match what I needed. I kept thinking about that whisper. Maybe you deserve to be adored. I hadn't told him what she said. I couldn't. Because that wasn't the betrayal. The real betrayal was how deeply I believed it. How I heard those 5 words and felt like someone had finally acknowledged what I was afraid to admit to myself. I wanted to be adored. Not just touched or tolerated or taken for granted. I wanted softness. Curiosity. The kind of affection that doesn't always lead to the bedroom. The kind that lingers in the eyes and in the voice, not just the hands. And yet, watching Mark in the stillness of our unraveling, I saw his pain too. He wasn't withdrawing because he didn't care. He was withdrawing because he did. And he didn't know how to fix what had already cracked. I thought about leaving. More than once. I even looked at a hotel once while standing in the kitchen. Just for a night. Just for space. But then I imagined him waking up, seeing my side of the bed empty, and assuming the worst. And somehow, that broke my heart more than staying ever could. So I stayed. But not because it was easier. Because part of me still wondered, quietly, hesitantly, if there was anything left to save. We didn't talk for almost a week. Not really. Small words passed between us. Did you eat? Laundry's done. I'll be home late. But the things that mattered stayed caged between our ribs, unspoken. Then came the night it cracked. I was in bed early, staring at the ceiling again. The space beside me remained untouched, cold. I thought he'd sleep on the couch again, like he had the past few nights. I wouldn't have blamed him. But I heard his footsteps. Not the ones of a man avoiding confrontation, slower. Cautious. Like he was walking toward something that could still break. He didn't say anything as he sat on the edge of the bed. I could feel the weight of him behind me, the shift in the mattress. My heart raced. Part hope, part fear. He placed a hand gently on my shoulder. Claire, he whispered, barely above breath. I miss you. I rolled over, finally, tears already stinging my eyes. He looked tired. Not just from work, from us. from carrying something he didn't know how to name. "I miss me too," I said. He nodded, like he understood more than he let on. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted. "But I don't want to keep pretending it's fine." I exhaled, a shaky, relief-soaked breath. "Then let's stop pretending." For the first time in what felt like months, we really talked. Not about chores or bills or schedules, but about us. About the loneliness that had crept in, the way we'd both retreated into habit, the quiet resentments that built up like dust in the corners of our marriage. He didn't get defensive. He didn't shut down. He just listened. And when I told him about the whisper, not what she said, just that it happened, he didn't flinch. His jaw tightened, yes. But he didn't walk away. "I don't blame you," he said, voice low. "If someone made you feel seen, and I didn't, that's on me." I reached for his hand. For the first time in weeks, I wanted to. He didn't try to kiss me. Didn't touch me like a man expecting something in return. He just lay beside me, his forehead resting against mine, and whispered, "Let's try again. Not start over. Just try again." And I nodded. It didn't fix everything. Nothing magical happened. But that night, we fell asleep holding each other, not for sex, not for routine, but because it finally felt safe again. Warm again. Maybe even human again. If you'd told me 6 months ago that a single whisper would unspool my entire sense of self, I would have laughed. Or maybe cried. Now I just understand it. Because it wasn't about her. Not really. Jenna was a mirror, one I hadn't looked into in years. When she sat on my lap and whispered, "Maybe you deserve to be adored," it wasn't flirtation. It was clarity. It was someone holding up a lantern in the dark hallway of my marriage and saying, "See? This is where you stopped recognizing yourself." I've thought about that moment more times than I can count. Not because I'm in love with her, I'm not. And not because I regret what happened. I don't. I think I just finally heard something I hadn't been brave enough to admit to myself. That I was lonely. And not the kind of lonely that can be fixed with more date nights or a surprise bouquet of flowers. It was deeper. A kind of loneliness that lives in silence and subtle dismissals and the 1,000 tiny ways two people stop touching each other's hearts while still brushing elbows in the kitchen. Mark and I are still together. That might surprise you. It surprises me some days. But what's changed isn't our love, it's the way we tend to it. We're learning a new language. One that doesn't assume. One that listens. One that pauses before reaching for skin and instead reaches for truth. We talk now. Not perfectly and not always calmly. But honestly. I told him everything, how I'd been feeling, how small I'd started to feel in our life together, how being desired isn't the same as being understood. He didn't run from it. He didn't collapse into guilt. He stayed. And I stayed too. That matters. Now, we check in without waiting for a fight. We touch, but not always sexually. Sometimes it's just a hand on the back during dishes, or a forehead kiss before work, or sitting together without the TV on, saying nothing. We've learned that intimacy doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts in the pause before defensiveness. In the sentence that ends in a question instead of a point. In the effort it takes to see the person you promised to love after the easy years fade. And still, I think about the whisper. Not because I want to go back to it, but because it woke me up. Jenna reminded me I was still in there, the Claire who wanted to be seen, not managed. Who needed to be spoken to with care, not just kissed between routines. Who wanted to feel like more than a well-oiled machine keeping the household running. I thanked her months later. I told her not everything, but enough. She smiled. "It wasn't about me," she said. "It was about you waking up." And she was right. What I've learned, what I earned through all of this, is that love isn't a static thing. It doesn't just live on vows and photos and anniversaries. It has to be fed, watered, witnessed. I'd love to say Mark and I are perfect now, that we figured it all out. But that's not how real life works. We still stumble. We still get tired. We still fall back into silence some nights and have to pull each other out. But there's effort now. And tenderness. And most importantly, there's presence. Sometimes, I still feel that ghost of loneliness brushing past me. But now I speak it. I say, I miss you, even when he's sitting right beside me. And he answers, I'm here. That's all I ever wanted, really. To be met. To be held, not for what I could give, or how quickly I could recover, or how quietly I could carry things, but simply because I exist. Because I matter. So yes, she sat on my lap and whispered something I can't forget. But what came after? That's what I'll remember forever.